Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I hope you sisters are doing well. Welcome to the class. Thank you for joining us. The numbers are dwindling, inshallah. The other sisters do also join us. Anyways, inshallah, today the plan is, sisters, that we talk about ghusl and tayammum. Tayammum, we will start it. I don't think we will finish the discussion on tayammum. But because we won't go into obviously all of the details about ghusl, so ghusl shouldn't take us that long. Inshallah, we will start it and finish it today. Here is a kind of overview of different discussions. My voice is coming through okay, right, sisters? You can hear me fine? Yeah? Okay. Of course, like always, at any time, please do feel free to ask questions, participate. It would be good to hear from you guys as well. Yeah, so some of the discussions that come up in ghusl is, first of all, obviously how to do ghusl, and so we will talk about that. There's some certain points, clarifications, and then dealing with doubts. It's not complicated, but these are points that we will go through as well. One of the big discussions that is discussed with under ghusl is different types of ghusl. Okay, and obviously you can imagine for sisters, there's a whole lot of details there. Even for both men and women, the issues of janaba, the rules around janaba, how does one enter the state of janaba, what are the restrictions in the state of janaba, all of that we're not going to go into. Okay, obviously this is a co-ed kind of class, so we're not going to discuss that. You guys can look into that or, learn that elsewhere, inshallah. So as a result, this discussion on ghusl is going to be short. We'll talk a little bit under types of ghusl about ghusl of Jum'ah, the Friday ghusl, and then we will move on. So we'll start the discussion on tayammum after this, but like I said, I don't think we will complete that discussion either. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Basically, the first thing when it comes to ghusl is that there are two different ways to perform ghusl, just like what we talked about wudu. In fact, you know what? Back when we talked about wudu, I said three different ways. The same three would apply here. So what were the three? Tartibi, irtimasi, and jabira. Okay, it's kind of, you can, jabira, you end up doing tartibi. So in a way, it's like you're doing tartibi with a jabira, with a bandage. So, whether you say two types or three types, it's not a big deal. The same difference, same kind of, different types apply over here. So basically, to explain, tartibi is this sequential type of ghusl. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly is ghusl, but for now, sequential, where you have three parts to it. You first do your head and neck, that's the first part, and then your right side, the right side of the remainder of your body, and then the left side. Now, some of the maraji, again, probably something you know, some of the maraji say that every one of these parts is necessary, that you need to first do the first one and then move on to do the second one. And then you finish the second one, that's your right side, and then you move on to do the last part, your left side. Some maraji, like Ayatollah Sistani, they say that between the right side and the left side, it's not wajib to have an order. It's mustahab. You can do it the way other marajas say, or you can just make sure you first do your head and neck, and then the rest of the body all together is going to be okay for Ayatollah Sistani. Just for your information, some marajas say all the three is just optional, mustahab. Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi, he says that, even between the head and the rest of the body, it's not a wajib thing that you gotta first do the head and neck and then move on to the rest of the body. All these three sections are mustahab for him. So there is this idea that there is an order in the tartibi form of ghusl, but again, there's details like I just said. Some maraji require all three steps, some require two steps, some say no, it's just all, even in the tartibi form, it's just one step. If it's just one step for like Ayatollah Makarim, then what's the difference between tartibi and the next type? The next type, irtimasi, is this idea that you're like jumping in a pool or you're slowly entering the sea. Okay, so in irtimasi ghusl, there has to come a point where you are completely submerged under the water. Again, well, according to Ayatollah Sistani and some Marajid, there's basically two different ways you can do irtimasi ghusl. Either in one go you jump in water, or you slowly enter the water. You walk into the water with the niyyah that I'm entering it for ghusl. Or the first one you jump in one go, you have a niyyah that you're doing ghusl. But the idea is that you have to reach a point where you are completely submerged, covered with water. Water is touching all parts of your body. And that would be the irtimasi ghusl. Just to step back, when we say ghusl, we're talking about washing. Okay, this is different from wiping. I was saying earlier that wudu is something that has both washing and wiping in it. As opposed to that, ghusl is just washing, and tayammum is just gonna be wiping. So the idea here is when we say ghusl, you are washing the entire body, making water reach the entire body, either sequentially, first the head and neck, right side and left side, or in one go, the irtimasi form, you are making the water reach. Any questions? Does that make sense? Okay, the next discussion that comes up here is this idea of niyyah. Okay, so like I said, there's times where ghusl becomes wajib, six different situations where it becomes wajib. I can list them out to you, and many, many different situations where it can be mustahab. One of the most common that we normally know and perform is the ghusl for Friday, the day of Friday, which we will talk a little bit about. But beyond that, there's lots of other types of mustahab ghusl. All of these different forms of ghusl are performed exactly the same way. And you can even just do one ghusl with a niyyah that I want to do this both for Friday and for, I don't know, night of Qadr and for whatever wajib or mustahab forms of ghusl that you want to perform. Okay, Ayatollah Sistani and other Marajid even go into details that as long as you just have a niyyah of there's some details here that I don't want to go into because it becomes complicated. But Ayatollah Sistani says something like this that as long as you have a niyyah of doing ghusl qurbatan ilallah, it suffices for all the ghusls you need to do. If you have multiple ghusls that are wajib on you, for example, it's all taken care of. Even if it's the day of Friday, also the Friday ghusl is taken care of. Okay? Um, Yeah, I think okay, so I was just gonna list out the wajib ones. There's six wajib ones. For men and women, we have janaba, mass when you touch a dead body with certain conditions, the dead body has to still be cold. So it has to have become cold. So it's not like the person just died a moment ago. Mass and then mayyit itself, the ghusl performed by other people on a dead body. These are the three forms of wajib ghusl. Like I said, Janaba we're not going to go into, and Mayyit, Massa Mayyit will come the end of this book that we're following. If we ever get around to like lesson number 80 or something like that, at that point there's details about death and dying, and one of the discussions there is the ghusl of Mayyit and Massa Mayyit. For sisters, there's three forms of wajib ghusl: hayd, istihada, and nifas. Okay? These are the different types of ghusl. Another thing is that all the conditions that we talked about that are there in wudu. So in wudu, we said that you have conditions about how the water needs to be pure water, not mixed. We described what that means. The word was mutlaq and not mudaf. Or the water needs to be permissible to use. It can't be haram. It can't be stolen water you don't have permission to use. It can't be najis water, and so on and so forth. There were other conditions. All of those conditions of wudu also apply here for ghusl. There's just two things that do not apply in ghusl. What are those? First of all, the idea of muwalat. And second of all, the idea of washing in a certain direction. So wudu has a direction. You gotta wash from the top of your face down to the bottom of your chin, or you gotta wash from your elbow down to your fingertips. In ghusl, there's no direction. You can wash right way, left way, up, down, any way is gonna be fine. The other thing was muwalat. Just to engage you sisters, respected sisters a bit, can somebody remind me what was the definition of muwalat? There was a subtle difference here. I want to see if you remember. I said Ayatollah Sistani, in normal circumstances, he defines muwalat for wudu in a certain way. Ayatollah Khamenei has a different definition of muwalat. So my first question to you sisters is, do you remember what that was for wudu? Secondly, if we say you don't need muwalat in ghusl, that has some interesting results. For example, let's say I forgot to wash one part of my body in ghusl. What would now be my responsibility? Okay, so I have two questions. Opening the floor to hear from you guys. If you have any thought, even put it in the chat if you want, or take up the mic. Bismillah. What was the definition of muwalat in wudu? And then what would the consequence of muwalat not being a condition in ghusl be? What would the consequence be in terms of forgetting something? Anybody? Bismillah, sisters. If you don't, if you're not sure, no problem. Just take a guess. Inshallah, we hear from you. Ahsan, Sister Masuma and Fatima. Muwalat is ensuring that there isn't too much time between each step of wudu. Sister Masuma, Sister Fatima, there was a little bit of a more precise definition. Like your definition is very vague. How would you know that you've lost the muwalat in wudu? Let's say you take a break of 1 minute. Is that going to break your wudu? 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Yes, Sister Asya.
I think for Ayatollah Sistani, it was based on common perception. If the person has moved too far away and people think that he or she has stopped doing wudu. And then for Ayatollah Khomeini, it was the water, like it was dry on the area, then it's considered not continuous.
Exactly, Ahsant. Good job. Yeah, exactly as Sister Asiya said, it was right. So for Ayatollah Sistani, it was a urfi definition of mualat. If somebody's looking at you and they think you're no longer doing wudu, you've lost the urfi mualat. On the other hand, for Ayatollah Khamenei, it was about the previous body part that you were washing drying up. Okay. What about the next question? So if we now say that this idea of continuity is not required at all in ghusl. Okay, in ghusl, I could take a break between I wash my face and my head, my neck, and then I go away for 2, 3 hours. I can now come back and just continue my ghusl. Okay, in mashallah, you guys in Canada, America, that's not an issue. But in other parts of the world, sometimes the water just gets cut. You could be taking a shower and all of a sudden the water cuts. Okay, and you don't have water. So you don't need to worry. If you're in the middle of ghusl, you can just continue your ghusl from where you were before. So there's an interesting consequence of this. Let's say you realize you forgot to wash something. Well, what would now be your responsibility? What do you guys think? How do you finish your wudu, or what do you have to do your wudu all over again? Sister Sana, Zahra, Sister Atika, Zahra Saab, what do you sisters think? If you forgot to wash something, given that there's no muwalat condition, what do you do? I'll help you guys out. I'll give you different scenarios. let's say you realize that you forgot to wash something on your right side of the body, and now you remember. Versus if you realize you forgot to wash something on your left side of the body. Let's say like you come out of the shower doing ghusl, and then you see, oh, there was like a piece of tape stuck to the bottom of your foot. So obviously that part didn't get washed. Now, if it was on your right foot versus if it was on your left foot, what would the responsibility be here? What do you guys think? Mr. Walia Fatima, what do you think? Sister Masuma says, Masuma and Fatima, and yeah, I think for ghusl, you would just wash that body part after. Sister Walia Fatima, you're sure that one part has not been washed. Okay, so you definitely need to do something. You come out of the shower and you look and you say, oh my God, I had like tape stuck to my foot. So I definitely didn't wash what was under the tape. Okay, so it's not like you're totally fine and you can just continue. But the question is, how do you, yeah, okay, so mashallah, both Sister Walia Fatima, Sister Masuma, and Fatima, you guys got it. Basically, the idea is you just wash that part that you didn't wash with a point here, with a very important point. Okay, so let's say I follow Ayatollah Khamenei. And Ayatollah Khamenei, like I was saying, he requires I need to wash the right side of my body before the left side. So the last step of ghusl is my left side of the body. Now, if I find some tape on my left foot, for example, that was my example. Yeah, here I just wash the part that was covered by the tape with the niyat of ghusl, and I'm done my ghusl. I don't need to do anything else. But if it was on my right foot, I have a problem. Okay, here I need to wash that part under the tape, and now it's like I've washed the right side of the body. Now, all over again, I do need to wash the left side. Does that make sense, sisters? Because it's like, I washed the left side when I had not really yet finished the right side. So I need to step back and kind of continue my ghusl from where it was not correctly done. Okay, so if you follow Ayatollah Sistani, it's easier. You follow Ayatollah Makarim, it's even really easy because I saw Ayatollah Makarim, there's absolutely no order. It's just all one thing. For Ayatollah Sistani, it's two steps, head and neck, and then the second step is the rest of the body. So for Ayatollah Sistani, if you find the tape on your right foot or on your left foot, you're okay. You just wash that part and your ghusl is done. Okay, the next thing that again is really important and practical, relevant is that do you need to do wudu after you're done ghusl? Let's say you're doing ghusl before Dhuhr prayers, you finish ghusl, do you need to go do wudu or not? Here there's a big difference between maraja again. A lot of maraja like Ayatollah Khamenei, they would say that only ghusl of janaba suffices for wudu. If you're doing ghusl of Jumu'ah, you're doing ghusl of the day of Arafah, ghusl of, I don't know, Shab Qadr, you still need to do wudu after that for Ayatollah Khamenei. Okay? As opposed to that, Ayatollah Sistani has a bit of a more complicated explanation. And this is because as a marja, let me actually spend a minute since we have time here. I can try to explain this concept a little bit more. It's actually important. When it comes to mustahabbat, things that are mustahab, our scholars are not that picky about the authenticity of the hadith that tells us something is mustahab. Okay? So you can't come and be like, oh, Mafatihul Jinan is a very unauthentic book. It's full of hadith that don't have a good chain of narrators. No, that's not the way our ulama work. When it comes to mustahab actions, they're very easygoing. As long as we have some hadith in some respectable book that says do this action, it would normally be accepted. And, ulama would easily say, okay, this is a good action to do. At the very least, we can do it with the niyat of what's called raja'an, raja'ul matlubiyah. that I do this action hoping that insha'Allah it's something mustahab, Allah will reward me for it. Du'as that we recite, even for example, mustahab ghusls that we may have, a lot of them are like that, where it's something that, it might be mustahab, it's there in some book of hadith, but the maraji are not going to carefully look at it and say, okay, is the chain of narrators authentic? Is it something I really trust? They would do that for wajibat, for muharramat, for conditions and other ahkam, fiqhi discussions, but not that much for mustahabbat. Okay, does that make sense? As a result, Ayatollah Sistani's opinion is much more relaxed here as opposed to Ayatollah Khamenei, where any ghusl, even if it's a mustahab ghusl, it would suffice for wudu. But he wants to make one point clear here that it has to be a ghusl that I'm sure is really mustahab. Because, like I just said, a lot of the mustahabbat, Ayatollah Sistani would say, fine, you can do it, but it's not something I'm 100% convinced is really mustahab. And so, as a result, a lot of the mustahab ghusls that you would find in a book like Mafatihul Jinan, they still wouldn't suffice for wudu for Ayatollah Sistani. But then Ayatollah Sistani does give us a list of certain mustahab ghusls that he's definitely convinced about. And he says that these ones, for sure, they're mustahab, and as a result, you don't need to do wudu. Okay, so for example, the most strongly recommended one we'll talk about shortly is ghusl of Jum'ah, to do ghusl on the day of Friday. There's no doubt about that. That's very, very recommended. So if you do ghusl of Jum'ah for Ayatollah Sistani, it does suffice for wudu. Similarly, for the day of Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Hajj, day of Arafah, on the nights of Qadr, and so on and so forth, there are certain ghusls that are definitely, definitely mustahab, even for Ayatollah Sistani. And so he would say that all of those ones that I'm sure are mustahab would suffice for wudu. Okay, but just because you find something in Mafatihul Jinan, don't just assume it's gonna suffice for wudu. Make sense? If anybody has any questions, please do feel free to jump in, ask your questions. Some other points about ghusl here, just to clarify. Yeah, one important thing, I guess, especially for your sisters, is that what happens when it comes to long hair? If you remember, we said for wudu, you don't need to make the water reach the skin. If you have a beard, for example, you can just do wudu over the beard. If it's a thick beard, just do wudu over the beard and your wudu is fine. For ghusl, you need to make sure the water reaches the skin. That's one point. And then there is a discussion that do you need to wash long hair or not? Ayatollah Sistani says you don't need to. Ayatollah Khamenei says ihtiyat wajib, you should. The result is that even if somebody follows Ayatollah Khamenei, they could follow Ayatollah Sistani for this, and you don't need to wash the long hair. But you do need to make sure that the water reaches the skin. Sister Zahra Saab, yes, you can do wudu before ghusl if it's a mustahab ghusl. Why not? Yeah. Instead of after. Yeah.
Sorry, Shaykhna, what if it's a
Wajib.
wajib? Yeah.
So, everybody says that ghusl of janaba suffices for wudu. So then you definitely don't need to do wudu after doing ghusl of janaba. And therefore, some of the maraji have said it's haram to do ghusl, to do wudu. Meaning what? Meaning that like if you do it with this niyyah that this is something I have to do, it's like a bid'ah because everybody says you don't have to do it. Okay? Of course, it's always recommended to do wudu. This is something we talked about last week or the week before, that to renew your wudu, even if you already were in the state of wudu, it's recommended to do wudu again. So when Maraja say it's haram to do wudu after ghusl of janaba, we have to clarify what they mean. They mean that, if you do it with this kind of bid'ah niyyah that, oh, it's still wajib on me to do wudu. Does that make sense? But yeah,
Yes, it
so
does.
if
Thank you so much.
um If somebody is in the state of janaba and then they want to do wudu, that wudu, sister, it does help, like it does count for something. Certain things that are makruh in the state of janaba, their karaha is lifted if you do wudu. But the point is, for like prayer, you still need to, or for fasting, or for tawaf, wajib, you still need to do ghusl of janaba. And then once you've done that ghusl of janaba suffices for wudu. So I think that should kind of answer your question. Okay. Another thing is, what if before you do wudu, you're already wet? Before you do ghusl, you're already wet. Obviously, there's no problem, right? Like we said, even with wudu, your face and your hands can be wet because you're washing. Over here, same thing. When you're doing ghusl, you're washing the body. So if it was already wet from before, there's no problem. It's gonna get wet again, this time with the niyyah of ghusl. Another thing, I said that the definition of ghusl is making water reach. Okay, washing meaning making water reach. You don't need to necessarily pass your hand over everything. That's mustahab apparently, but you don't have to do that. If you just stand under the shower and the water goes on that body part, that's fine. That's enough. Okay, when it comes to doubts, it's very much like wudu. If you remember, we said if you have a doubt about whether you performed wudu or not, you assume you haven't performed wudu and you go back and do the wudu. Okay? But in this time period, if you prayed, your prayer is going to be valid, right? Same thing over here for ghusl. If I have ghusl that, oh my God, if I have a doubt that, oh my God, I needed to do ghusl, did I do ghusl or not? I'm not sure if I did it. Okay, now I need to do it because I'm not sure whether I did it or not. But if in this interim I did some prayers, I don't need to repeat those prayers. Okay? And then again, like wudu, if you ever have doubt about whether you did it correctly or not, you can just ignore these doubts and move on. So, it seemed to be that when I was looking at the words of different maraja, some of them were saying that in the middle of ghusl, while you are washing, if you have a doubt right there that did I wash it correctly, then just wash it again. But there are some of the maraja, Ayatollah Sistani, even there he said like just overall ignore these kind of doubts. If you ever have a doubt that did I do it correctly or not, just ignore it. Assume it was done correctly and move on. Okay, so everybody would say that if you've passed, like you're thinking about an action that you've already completed. Either you're done the ghusl altogether, or when you're washing your right side, you doubt that, oh, did I wash my face correctly or not? Definitely you don't need to worry about it. You can move on. Okay, I just saw some different explanations when it came to doubt about correctly washing that part that you are busy washing right now. So while you're washing your right side, if you have doubt that, oh, did I really do it properly? Here, Ayatollah Khamenei's Risala said just, you're washing it anyways, go back and do it again. Make sure you've done it properly. Ayatollah Sistani's was like, overall, just ignore these kind of doubts. Okay, the last point about ghusl, and then we'll move on, is I just wanted to talk about Friday ghusl. Like I said, this is really, really important. It's so important that apparently, some of the ahadith, some of the statements of scholars seem to even indicate it's wajib. But nobody says, no maraja say it's wajib. But it's just like the emphasis is so much in the riwayat that yeah, okay. So previous scholars of hadith, like Sheikh al-Saduq, Sheikh al-Kulaini, 1,000 years ago, some of our great scholars of hadith, they actually said it was wajib. That's how much emphasis there is in hadith for the Friday ghusl. One of the ahadith, and there's a hadith like this, maybe it's the same hadith exactly mentioned in Mafatihul Jinan. If you go to the actions for the day of Friday, one of them is ghusl, and this hadith is mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ is telling Imam Ali alayhi salam that make sure you do the Friday ghusl, even if it means you have to not buy food. And that limited money you would have spent on food, you have to go buy water with that money. Make sure you still perform the Friday ghusl. We never have such issues nowadays, mashallah. Water is like, you know, so readily available for all of us. So, inshallah, it's something we give importance to. When it comes to the time, when do we perform the Friday ghusl? Okay, if you do it in the morning of the day of Friday, that's definitely correct. That's definitely the right time to do it. So if you do it in the morning, you can make the niyyah that it is the mustahab thing. Exactly. So from the Fajr time up until the Dhuhr time on Friday, you can perform this ghusl with the niyyat of ada, meaning you're performing it properly in the right time when it is mustahab. If you go beyond Dhuhr time and you're doing it in the evening, the afternoon, evening of Friday, here Maraji say that don't make a niyat of ada or qada because it's not clear. Maybe the time was just until the Dhuhr, until the Friday prayers, and so now in the evening it's really become qada. So because it might be qada, try to make a general niyyah. You can always do that, by the way, with things. You can make a general niyyah that, I don't know if this action is ada or qada. Let's say you're praying your Fajr prayers and you didn't get a chance to check Jafri.org or whatever you check, and you're not sure did your Fajr become qada or not. You can just say the prayers with this niyyah that, okay, God, whatever is my responsibility, ma fi dhimma. If it's still the time of Fajr, the niyyah should be ada. If it's already become sunrise, the niyyah should be qada. You can always do that. And so even over here, Marajis say for the Friday ghusl, you should make a general niyyah like that if it's in the afternoon. If you miss it on Friday, you can do it on Saturday as well. Okay, funny thing is that the words of the Marajis seem to indicate don't do it at nighttime. Wait until Saturday morning, and on Saturday, during the daytime on Saturday, you can do it with the niyat of qada that I missed it on Friday. I can do it on Saturday. Okay, like I said, there's lots of other mustahab ghusls. At times, there's mustahab ghusls for holy periods of time. Okay, like the day of Eid, the day of Arafah, the night of Qadr. Sometimes it's for a place that you're going to, for entering Mecca. There's like a ghusl to do. Sometimes it's for an action, for the ziyarah of one of the Ahlul Bayt, to do tawbah. Okay, there's a very effective, very important way of doing tawbah, seeking repentance from Allah, that you'll find in the mustahab actions of the month of Dhul Qa'dah. In Dhul Qa'dah on Sundays, I think Saturdays or Sundays, there's like a special form of tawbah to do where you first do ghusl and then you perform 4 rak'at prayer and then you say istighfar 70 times. Interesting thing is that that type of tawbah can be done anytime. It's not just for Dhul Qa'dah and I don't know, Saturday or Sunday. It's something that even the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions that form of repentance, he said that this can be done anytime. So, these are other types of mustahab ghusls that are there in Islam. There's lots of them. Okay. I'm going to pause here again if anybody has any questions, any comments. Otherwise, like I said, my plan was to start the discussion on tayammum, not to go into it completely, but start talking about when do we do tayammum, what is it valid to do tayammum on, and then we'll leave it at that. No questions, no comments. Oh yeah, one last thing. There's just the way we talked about wudu jabira, there's the idea of ghusl jabira. Let's say you have a bandage on your leg. Okay, your leg, God forbid, is like in a cast, and you can't remove that cast. You would do ghusl not irtimasi, you would do ghusl tartibi, and when it comes to the bandage, you would just wipe a hand over the bandage as opposed to washing, because you can't wash that. Okay. So, like I said, we'll start discussing tayammum now if there's no questions or comments. I think it's gonna be Maghrib time in Toronto soon anyway, so inshallah we'll wrap things up in the next 10-15 minutes. Um, and we'll finish the whole discussion on tayammum, inshallah, next week. In one hadith we have from Imam Rida alayhi salam that tayammum is the wudu and ghusl of a mudtar, somebody who doesn't have any option. Okay, so basically the idea behind tayammum is that when you're doing tayammum, you are doing it instead of wudu or instead of ghusl. It's performed the same way, exact same way, regardless of whether the tayammum is instead of wudu or instead of ghusl. Okay? But overall, the whole idea behind tayammum is that when you don't have the ability to do wudu or ghusl, instead you perform tayammum. Okay, we're gonna go into more details. Like I didn't get a chance to read all the ahkam of this properly, but overall, the general scenarios. Next week, maybe we'll go into more details. The general scenarios of when you would do tayammum are when water is not accessible. Okay, so let's say there's no water. You're in the desert. You're somewhere where you don't have access to any water at all. Or even if the water is there, it's not something available for you to use. For example, it's not yours. It's only designated for drinking water. Or even if, for example, there's you need the water to feed, to drink. Either you or your family, your friends, somebody, even other people who are under your care, or animals, or there's some important need for that water, you can't use it on wudu or ghusl. Okay, you can imagine in the past people would live in places where maybe water wasn't always readily available in the deserts, and so when water is limited, you don't need to spend it, precious water, spend it up on ghusl and wudu. Similarly, if water is gonna harm you, let's say you have like I once was asked a question by a sister who had she said that her skin, when she would do wudu, it would get like really, I don't know, troubled, rash. The water would affect her skin really badly. So the answer that I asked the office of Ayatollah Sistani that what's her responsibility, they said that if it becomes something which is really hard to tolerate, if it's like unbearable for her to do wudu, either harmful or very difficult, then she doesn't do wudu, she does tayammum. Okay, so that's another case. The last one is when the time for wudu, for prayer is very limited, or the time of beginning the fast of the month of Ramadan is very limited. Somebody needs to do ghusl of janaba, and Fajr prayers is just going to become qada in like 5 minutes. Or, the time of Fajr is about to enter in the month of Ramadan, and they need to fast. In these situations, if doing wudu or ghusl is going to take too long, and your prayer is going to be prayed, even a little bit of it outside of the valid period, like if the qada will enter, or the fast of the month of Ramadan will start. And if you can do tayammum quickly, normally if you have sand around, tayammum just takes like, 20 seconds. Ghusl is going to take like 5, 10 minutes maybe. So because it's a lot quicker, you in these situations, because of the, you don't have any choice, you do tayammum instead. Again, there's details here that we'll go into next week. Like when you do tayammum in this situation, it's only for that one action, and then it's like you don't have wudu again. Okay, so here, for example, let's say you have 5 minutes left till qada, you do tayammum, you quickly pray. Now you can't touch the Quran anymore. It's not like you're still in the state of wudu. Now you have to go and do that wudu or ghusl or whatever you had to do. It was just valid for that prayer that you needed to make. Something like that here that inshallah I'll prepare better next week and we can talk about it more. The last thing inshallah I'll talk about and end with is I prepared this from Ayatollah Khamenei's. I don't think there's a difference for Ayatollah Sistani, but again I'll double check that next week. What can we do tayammum on? There may be a difference actually. Maybe on some of these there is a difference. So, what I'm about to tell you, if you follow Ayatollah Sistani, we need to double check it. Okay? Definitely, obviously, for everybody, the main thing that you can always do tayammum on is sand. Sand, gravel, pebbles, the default dry earth. That's the main thing. Okay, so every marja is gonna have that, of course. Oops, wait. The next thing, another thing that comes up though is that can you perform it on wet earth? Okay, so if you, like, let's say there's mud basically, or wet earth. Over here, I saw Ayatollah Khamenei says, yeah, it's fine. For like a lot of these, you'll see for all of these, in fact, other than wood, Ayatollah Khamenei says it's fine. Because Ayatollah Khamenei is easygoing. Some of these we have to double check whether Ayatollah Sistani allows them. But for wet earth, he says it's fine. For stones, all kinds of stones, be it a normal rock stone, gypsum, limestone, marbles, all of that is fine for Ayatollah Khamenei. So, you could just go to, like, let's say at home you have a counter that's really made out of proper stone. You can just do tayammum on that counter. It'll take you like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, you'll be done. Clay, bricks, pottery. Let's say there's like a clay vessel, a clay water jug that you have. You could just do tayammum on that. Even cement, this was surprising. So I think Ayatollah Sistani doesn't allow this. I have to double check. But even cement and, like tiles and things like that would be okay for Ayatollah Khamenei. The last one is wood. Of course, wood is not allowed. So when I put wood here, I meant to cross it out that you cannot do tayammum on wood. Okay, again, since we have a couple of minutes, let me just quickly walk you through how to do tayammum and then we'll end with that. So the basic idea of what to do, again, we have niyyah, of course. We always have in all acts of worship. Yeah, this was something I didn't mention in ghusl, but it's just the same thing as what I had said for wudu. That we always, in these acts of worship, one of the things we need to have is niyyah. But what does niyyah mean? It just means you know what you're doing. If somebody were to stop and ask you, what are you doing? And you would like, that, okay, I'm doing tayammum right now, or in the back of your mind, you know that you're doing ghusl, that's fine. You have your niyyah. So similarly here, you have niyyah. First of all, you take your two hands and you remove any barrier, okay? So for example, you can't have a ring on for tayammum. There's to be no barrier at all on your hands, and you, with the palms of your hands, you hit on the earth, or any one of those surfaces that we just mentioned would be okay. Rocks or wet earth, or I don't know, bricks. You hit your hands on it, and then the first step is that you pass your hands over your forehead up until your eyebrows. Okay, so you somehow, maybe I'll show you guys pictures, it'll be easier. You somehow pass your palms of your hands over your forehead down to your eyebrows. And you keep your thumb open so it kind of passes over this part, your temple. And that would be the first step of the tayammum is finished. So you don't need to do anything on your nose, your cheeks. It's just that top part of your forehead that you need to wipe over. And that would be the first step. And then the second step, so the two steps of tayammum are your forehead and your hands. Okay? فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ. This is in the Quran. I'm pretty sure that was a verse of Quran about tayammum. So did I share the right one? The second step is that you basically just you wipe over your entire hand from your wrist down to your fingertips. So first, like with wudu, you use your left hand to wipe over your right hand. Okay, in wudu, we would have put water in our left hand and washed our right hand. Here, you use the palm of your left hand to wipe over your right hand. And then with your palm of your right hand, you wipe over your left hand. And that's it, you're done. Some Maraji like Ayatollah Khamenei, they say ihtiyat wajib, you should hit the earth a second time and do your hands again. But again, it's ihtiyat that you could do ruju to other Maraji on, and then you would be fine. So it's really very quick and very easy and straightforward. It doesn't take long to do. I'm just going to show you guys some pictures of it, and then inshallah we can wrap it up. Okay, so this is, for example, I think hopefully going to be a good picture right here. You can see the person passing in these images, you can see the person passing their hands over. Um, First of all, their forehead. You see how their hands are coming down over their forehead up until their eyebrows. So that's the, yeah, I think this would be a good one. So I'll just load up this image in a bit more. I'll load it up such that it's a bit bigger. Hopefully you guys can see this clearly. Can you guys see the image? Yeah. So first of all, the guy is passing his hands over his forehead. That's the part of that one. And then on the bottom right side, you can see that he is passing the hand over the other hand. That's all there is to it. Okay, it's nothing complicated, nothing hard. Like I said, it should be much, much quicker than wudu. Forget about ghusl, much faster than ghusl. Okay, sisters, if there's any questions, comments, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, inshallah, we can leave it at that. Next week, we'll quickly recap tayammum again, and then we'll move on to other discussions about najasat and taharat, inshallah. Okay. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين